Well, I don't know what happened, but the camera turned off on me there. So anyway, I just cut the hole out. I don't know how much of that you got to see, if you got to see any of it. So now I'm taking my half round file and kind of undercutting the back side there just to knock off the sharp edge or burr. And we'll round off the top just a little bit. And so therefore you can see what it looks like there in the final. A little bit on the busy side, but I think once we get the black pick guard on there, that'll take away some of that. But it looks pretty nice. Very smooth, clean. I'm pretty happy with it. By the plans that I use to build my Dreadnought guitars, I've already marked where the braces go. And I'm going to just take a straight edge, connect the marks now. This is one of the X braces, so I'll lightly draw it in.
You cut me, his song got under my skin, he held me, he knew me over again, he moved me, he knew that he had, how can I find words for that? He cut me just like the north wind, he left me with no wind.
Well, I believe that's got it. I'll take that back in and compare the plans again just to make sure I didn't mess something up, but I believe it looks right to me. The next step is to cut braces and start getting them stuck on this thing. I've got some brace material made and I'm just laying it over my lines here. I have to saw out a notch. This piece is going to go down first. This other one will go over the top of it like so. And first thing I need to do is draw the cutout. Alright, so I've got to get half of that, which would be 3065, I believe. That should be exactly half. And I'll mark it on here. That'll be the line I'll cut down to. Mark it on this side. I don't really need lines here, I don't think, but I'll draw them in just for grins. I could cut this on a bandsaw, but it'd be a little tricky because it is angular and everything, and I'll just do it with this little saw. It should do a nice job. These razor saws will cut real good sometimes, and then other times they bind a little bit. And when they start to bind, I typically like to use paraffin wax. You could use beeswax, but I think the paraffin glides a little bit easier on this kind of work. So I'll get out a new bigger chunk of paraffin wax, and I'm just going to run the blade through that. And I think it cuts much easier with paraffin than it does with beeswax. I think beeswax is a little more sticky on this kind of thing. There we go. Looks just right to me. Now the question is, can I chisel it out of there without breaking the whole thing? Start a little high and work my way down. Looks pretty darn good. This is a little bit like building a timber frame. You've got a lot of timber frame building, that is. You've got a lot of notch joints like this. I've done a little bit of the timber frame type work. Okay, so that one should be ready to go. It should go right there. So you can see how it'll go. The next one has to be cut the exact opposite way. And all I gotta do is find it. Here it is. Just doing a sanity check to make sure I've got the lines going the right way. They look like they are to me. So I'll mark the depth here. And pencil those in a little bit where I can see it a little better. And again, I don't really need the vertical lines, I don't think, but I'll put them in there just for safety's sake. And we'll saw this one. Put a little more paraffin on the blade here. And once again, we just knock it out of there. Now that may or may not fit. Yeah, it does. It fits pretty good. A little bit loose. I typically like them a little tighter than that, but that's all right. It'll work just fine. Off camera, I went ahead and cut all the rest of the braces. Got them all ready to glue on there. It's late in the day for me, a little after 4 now, so I was thinking about just calling it a day, but then I got to thinking if I go ahead and spend a little more time and glue these on here, then in the morning they'll be ready to carve, or I could move on to something else. So here we go. I'm gonna use my own homemade go bar system, and I just put it up here, and I think I'll vacuum it out real good and make sure it's not going to scratch up my top. Don't know how well you're going to be able to see all of what I'm doing here, but try to give you the best view I can. I'm going to go ahead and just get the glue on this thing and get going with it. I put the glue on like that, and I almost always use my finger to spread on things like this. It's just so much faster, so much easier, and I think it does a better job than anything else. I'm going to use a little brush to get the glue up in this joint here. Okay, that looks real nice. Now we'll see if the go bar system is going to work on this. I think it will. The only problem you have is it starts sliding things around instantly.
To begin how you moved me, I know that it did. How can I find words for him?
If you're wondering what woods I made this system out of, I just used plain old 2x4s and plywood for the top and bottom and the supports, and then all of the little tiny brace material, or whatever you want to call this stuff, the go bars themselves, is just western red cedar that I cut right here on the farm. It's a fairly flexible wood, and it seems to work great for this. Flexible, but yet it's got some strength to it. Pushes down pretty good. Seems to be working well. So now I'll move on to these little short ones on this side, because they're easy for me to reach right now. The last time I glued the ends of these to the upright braces, and there's no need to do that because you just carve it away anyway. So I'll just not do that this time. I'll turn it around here, which will give you a different view, and will make it easier for me to get to these large back braces. I kind of thought that this red cedar would have a memory and not straighten back out after you use them, but they straighten out really fine, so they're pretty good. It's a pretty good wood for this purpose. Now you get another view. And I'll get my last couple of braces on here. Okay, just 2 more braces to put on. Call this thing done. Unlike most guitar builders, I don't run my braces all the way through the kerf. I stop it at the kerf. There's a couple of reasons for that. Mainly it's just easier, that's one reason. But I also feel like it lets the guitar top vibrate just a little bit more. Okay, one last final little brace here. Well, I believe that will do it. Don't see how it could be too much better. So my friends, we'll see you in the morning and let you see what it looks like when we take the braces off of there. Getting ready to route the dovetail in the end of this 12-string neck. I've got it securely fastened to the vise here. I've got pads on both sides. And I've got it, approximately level. I don't care. It doesn't have to be perfectly level, but the, flat is good. I have a long dovetail cutting bit in here already. I have approximately half of the depth exposed. I've already drawn my pencil lines on here. Now, I was just telling Caleb, anybody in their right mind would probably be using a template on this. I've done many of them this way and I've never had a problem. I'm not bragging, I'm just saying this one could be the problem, but I'm willing to take the risk and give it a shot. I haven't had any problem just following the lines by eye, and it's just an easy way to do it for me, so here we go. Well, that cut real well. If I'd be lying if I said it's perfectly straight, but it's pretty dang straight. And in fact, it's almost perfect straight. But I watched the line real close, and I'll clean it up with a chisel, but it's really close. I'm going to cut the other side off camera. When I drop it down, I'll turn the camera back on and we'll show you the next cut. All right, I think you can see I've got both sides cut and they're both pretty darn straight. I've set my depth down to my depth right here, and I'm ready to cut the last little bit. And this is where you have to be really careful. Pretty nice. I left a little bit of a shelf on the bottom one there that I can just chisel out real easily. My depth here probably could have been a tiny hair deeper, but that's okay too. I also like to chisel them in a little bit so everything looks really pretty good. Don't really see much of a problem other than just cleaning up my mess. So here we go. Well, assuming Melissa can find a way to keep all these clips in order, you just saw me route this end on here and give you a close-up look at it. It's not perfect, but it's real close. It's got no real problems. So what I do is I just take a chisel now and I kind of enjoy carving wood. So, to me, cleaning this up like this is not a big deal. If you used a template, it would be perfect and you wouldn't have to even do this. I know that. You don't have to tell me that. But this is how I do it. And I don't see any point changing at this late stage in my life. I mean, I could. If I was making a lot of them, you'd bet I would. I would definitely use a template. But, when you're making one-off guitars and you're making, 2 a year, it's not that big a deal. And that looks pretty good to me. On that side, so that didn't take long. I could take and run a file or a rasp down that to clean that up a little bit more if I needed to. But you can see it doesn't take long. That's pretty clean. For now, that's clean enough. It's good enough. When I start hand fitting it, there'll be high spots and we'll just clean those off as we go. But for right now, that is perfectly acceptable to me, and I don't see a real problem with that. I will probably now cut in the detail of the neck and this heel, at least get this part of the neck shaped. And then I'm going to plan on clamping on the ears on this for this evening, let that dry overnight, and then tomorrow we'll probably bore the holes and everything for the pegs. But right now I'm going to draw the profile on this, and we're going to cut away the wood we don't need and kind of round this off, start making it look a little bit more like a neck. Well, my friends, I have this neck all marked up for the excess wood. You can probably see the lines I've drawn on here on the edges to cut off, and I brought them across the heel here. So for the most part, we're just in wood removal mode right here. The tricky part of this is the blade can grab it and pull it in and cut way more than you want. So you have to be conservative on this, and that's what I intend to try to be. We'll see how well that works.
It's almost spring now, I'm silent. I'll get to summer somehow, he moved me. He knew that he had, how can I find words for that?
This is another really tricky operation, and I've found about the best way to do it for me is to do it from the back side of the blade, and then that way I can watch the cut line there. But we'll give it a shot, see how it goes.
He cut me just like the north wind. He left me with nowhere to begin.
Well, you can see how that turned out. It's okay. I don't see any problems. I didn't cut very close, to be perfectly honest with you, so it's going to take some handwork. But then I just need to round off some of this area here. Now, I can do that pretty quickly with a rasp, but I'm going to take a little bit of the meat away with the saw just to save a little bit of rasping. At least that's my hope. Here we go.
And how he moved me, I know that he did. How can I find words for?
Well, again, I was pretty conservative with that. I could have taken off much more, I'm sure. As I said, a rough rasp works really quickly and it's very controllable. So I think I'll go that route, and I'll probably go ahead and do that now before I glue the wings on. So I'll try to rough this out a little bit more. We'll go over to another vise to do that. I've got a selection of rasps here, and I always start with this one. It's a very coarse rasp, and it knocks off the wood very quickly. This is actually a very simple process. A couple of steps. You glue boards together and then you cut away everything that's not a neck. It's just that simple. I got quite a bit more to go on that, but this will give you, this was only, 10 minutes work at the most. I don't even think it was that long. It's pretty round already. You can start to see it's starting to take the shape. So I'll finish that up off camera and show you what it looks like later. Well, as you can probably see, I've smoothed it off quite a bit with a smoothing rasp, one that's much finer. And now I'm going to use Alan Dust's little invention here, the sander on my drill. I used this the last time. As I recall, I need to run this in reverse to keep it cutting without unscrewing here, so I'll do that. Here we go. This is just about the perfect tool for shaping these heels right here. Of course, I don't have it in the camera very well, but it really does work well in shaping these heels. Makes short work of it, really. It really does a nice job. So thank you, Alan Dust, for sending this to me. Very nice. That really does a beautiful job. Yeah, it'd be really hard to beat that. That really works well. That's really looking nice. Just about to final. I'm going to stop right there. I like to give them a day or two and look at them again, and that makes me feel like I do a better job. So we're going to leave it right there. Once again, thank you, Alan Dust, for sending me this. There's Alan's name I wrote on there. Thank you, Alan. It's still not final by any stretch, but that's what she looks like after 15 minutes of work. Doesn't take long to make it into a nice looking neck. Probably my next step will be to take the scraper and clean it up a little bit, you know, just go around it like that and, you know, profile it. I can get it here in this bright light and, you know, clean it up a little bit more. The scraper's pretty exacting, leaves it really smooth and gets rid of the humps and things. So that's probably my next step, but I probably won't do that until a little later on. I think what I'll do now is go ahead and make the wings for this and get them glued up overnight so that we can keep moving on this thing. Well, I was looking around for some wood to clamp on the side of the peg head here to widen it just a little bit. It just is not quite wide enough, which is common on a lot of peg heads. And I just so happened to find the parts that I cut right off of here. So these are the side pieces that came right off of the sides there. So I figured, hey, where's a better place to use them than right here? The wood is smooth on one side already, so it fits right up to it. And we can just glue her in place, and it is just wide enough to put it on here. And it will work perfectly. In fact, I think I'll do it this way, and I can lay it down flat and clamp it this way, and it'll be good and flat on the top side then. The back side can run wild, it doesn't hurt anything, we'll cut that off later. So, with that in mind, I think I'm ready to glue it on. Just going to put the glue on the one side because I believe that's going to be more than sufficient. Help keep it from sliding around as much. And what I'll probably do is just fold my pad up here, lay it flat on this with some wax paper perhaps. So throw down a little piece of wax paper like that, lay this flat on here and then clamp these to it, and I can hold them down and everything will be flat. In fact, I may just put it right over here on the edge of the table where I can clamp it a little bit better. But I'll show you what that looks like when I get her clamped up. Well, that's what she looks like all clamped up with the wings on there. And we'll let that set overnight and profile the rest of that in the morning. Well, here's the current state of the 12 string. Those white lines you're seeing on there are from my window shade directly behind the camera. Sorry about that. But there you can kind of see the inlay and how nice it turned out. Where the little mismatch pattern is right there, that will be covered by the fretboard extension. So you won't see that. Now I am turning my attention to the back, and I'm going to try to lay out here over the top of this and see how I want the back to look. So I'm using the top kind of as a pattern. The top just, see, it's just not quite wide enough here. You can see right here, it just doesn't, these boards I have. First thing I want to do is see which way these were sawn. This should be it, I think, but maybe not. Yeah, I think that almost has to be it. I usually have marks on them. I don't see any marks on these. But when I look at the end, I can tell that that's the way they go. So these two sides are together. So I would open them up, book match like this. And I think it would look the best if they were sort of like that. And then we've got this piece to go in here. And they don't look like they're the same color, but they are. It just ages in the light over time. So I have a feeling this is the way I'm going to do it. Now I just need to decide how much width I want to leave up here for this piece. And down here at this end, it's just a matter of taste and preference. It's no big deal. I think what I'll do is I'll go to the joiner first and cut these smooth because I like the way it looks this way better than any other way I could lay it, I think, because I want these two edges together. So I'll go do that and I'll come back. So I think I've decided that I'm going to go 2 inches to 4 inches over the length of the back. Actually, this board's a little longer than that, so my measurements will be just a little off of that. But that's close enough. There's no black and white standard on it. So it just is what it is. It moved on me just a little bit, which doesn't really create too much problem. It's just annoying to have two lines there. And the outer line is not good, so I'll try to erase most of it. Good enough. Now I'll go cut that out. I'm not going to film that, but I'll just cut it on the bandsaw. So there's what she looks like put together. Now that's just raw wood. We're going to have some decoration in between there, so let me get that. Well, there's a little closer approximation of what it will look like. And yet that's still not it either. We have to, thickness sand all of this. I guess I'll do that next. Probably won't show much of that because I've shown it so many times, but I'll just use my little thickness sander I made and get these things down to the proper thickness for the back. Well, here's the state of things early the next morning. You can see the clamps have been on this all evening or all night. I'm going to pull the clamps off. This should be ready for applying the veneer, and the veneer needs to be added before I drill the holes. But before I can even apply the veneer, I want to clean this up and make it a little flatter and all that good stuff. So we'll go over to the sander and do that right now. Well, as you can see, we're at the sander, and this is pretty flat already, so it just needs a little dressing. That's really all it needs on this face.
Me, just like the north wind, you left me with nowhere to begin. How you moved me, I know that it did. How can I find words?
Well, I had a little bit of a pit in this area here, and it's just barely gone. You can almost still tell it's there, but that's good enough. The veneer is going to cover that, and it'll be no problem. In fact, I could take it down some more if I need to. I'm going to pass on that for now. Now we're going to try to true up this backside and make this curve right here that I use. First, I may just stop by the bandsaw and nip off these little extra nubs that are on this piece that was glued on. You can see we're at the bandsaw. I've got the fence set so that it should trim off most of this excess. At least I believe it will. I'll be careful and watch it real close. Turn on the vacuum system. That did a nice job. Now we'll take the sander and let the sander take off the rest of this area here. We're going over to my homemade sander. It's the only one that I've got that can do this. Okay, at the homemade sander, what I'll do is I'll loosen this up, drop the table down. The table is on a screw, and the screw is 8 threads per inch. One full revolution is 1/8 of an inch. And what I do is I just drop it until I kind of feel it going under there with just the lightest bit of pressure. And that's about right there. That kind of gives me a good reference, a starting point to clean this up. We'll turn on the vacuum system, and now we'll turn on the machine. You can see how it cleaned that up really well. Now we'll raise the table a couple thousandths, run it through again. Not quite cleaned up yet, almost, a couple more thousandths. You do have to be a little bit careful pulling this back because it can shoot it out of there. So you got to hold on to this. Got just that little bit of the end there that's a little low yet. So we're going to keep going until we get rid of that. I believe that did it. Now it's the same thickness the whole way. We're going to go put the veneer on this now, and that'll beef it back up just a little bit. But I don't know offhand what the thickness is, but I would guess it at over a 1/2 inch. 550 thousandths, 555 thousandths there roughly, 53 thousandths, whatever, 550 something thousandths, so it's a little over a half an inch thick. We'll put a veneer about 50 thousandths of an inch thick, so that's going to be right around 600 thousandths when we're done. Just a little under 5/8 probably. Maybe, you know, I got to go look at my plans to make sure, but that's just my guess right now. Well, we just got finished thickness sanding this. Got rid of all the little boo-boos that were in it. And now I'm going to just use the tuning keys themselves as kind of my reference on how thick I want the veneer. That's probably the best way to do it because, you know, all tuning keys aren't made exactly the same. These are the Grovers. You know, based on what I'm seeing there, I don't really want a real thick piece. If I was trying to just determine where I want the... Let me see here. We've got probably even better just to take and screw this in and decide what look I like the best, or even how far it goes in. It looks like it's stopping at a certain point here. Didn't expect that. So that may require that we have a fairly thick, of course there's a washer there too. So if I look at that, at the moment we're exactly at the thickness of this. So in other words, if you screw this down tight, we're right at thickness. So that's something I didn't expect, to be honest. So let's just go ahead and get a washer out. Let's just try to do the full blown thing here so we don't make any mistakes. You know, I'm just showing you how you can do this. If I had plans specific for this specific setup, I'd just use the plans, but since I don't, we'll just go this route and we'll figure it out. So let's put the washer on there, and these washers have a bevel. You want the bevel up toward the strings, and I think I like to see a little bit of the post. So we don't want a very thick veneer on this, I can tell you, or we're going to have to take this down a little bit more. So I think that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to take this down another 20 thousandths. Won't take it down a lot. But presently that's about 575 roughly. So if I put a 25 on this, that would just be about right. So I think I'm going to take this down another 20 thousandths, and that'll be in the ballpark then, and then I'll do some more measuring. Off camera I took it down to 525 thousandths, and just going to kind of measure this now and see visually if it looks okay. It looks like I could put a decent thick veneer on there now, and trying to gauge. That's a little tough to gauge just how thick of a veneer I can put on there, but I'll figure it out here in a minute. Okay, 566 puts me about where I want to be. 565. So that's about a 40 thousandths veneer. So I'm going to put about a 40 thousandths veneer on top of this. I can always take this down a little bit more if I need to, but right now we're going to start with that. I'm going to put a Paduke veneer over this because that'll match the back and sides, and I think it'll show up well with the flower that we're going to put on this and the inlay and everything, and I think it'll match the top of the guitar really nicely too. So that's where we're headed. Well, I looked through my scrap pile, and sure enough, I've got this piece that just is perfect width, and we can cut it off to length. It's just perfect, and I imagine that this may have been what's left over from the sides, so it's perfect to put it on the top. It's just a nice piece, so I'm going to make it a little oversized, and we'll turn it over like so, and cut her off right there. I'll go over to the bandsaw and square this up. So there you go. Well, I got this piece of veneer cut for this, and it looks beautiful. Well, I kind of thought I messed up at first because I just ripped it to the narrowest place on this, and then I forgot that this tapers, so, you know, it's just a tiny bit shy up here, but that's not a problem. First of all, this is a little wider than it needs to be. Second of all, there'll be a decorative trim around it, so it'll be covered, and, I mean, it'll be cut out anyway, so, you know, it's more than big enough. No problem at all, but I'm just pointing that out in case somebody's, you know, looking at those kinds of things. But no, it'll be perfect, no problem whatsoever. So, it looks like I'm just ready to glue it on there. And my only question is how I'm going to do that and how I'm going to clamp it so it doesn't slide around. Whenever you're gluing flat surfaces, they like to slide around. It really makes a mess. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to combat that yet, but we'll see how it goes here, and I'll show you what it looks like when I get her clamped up. Got an old rag here that I'm just going to wipe it down with some acetone. This is the side that'll be glued. So I just do that as a matter of practice. You can see there what it does. It really takes off a lot of oily stuff. I'm not sure this makes the glue stick any better, but I don't think it hurts anything. So I just do it. You can see there, it takes off a lot. And we'll turn it to a relatively clean spot, and we'll do it again. And you can see it just takes off more. There's a lot of stuff in this wood. That's pretty good. That acetone dries almost instantly. So we should be ready to get her glued up here pretty quickly. Typically, I just use Titebond Original, but in a case like this is something I don't ever want to come loose, and you've seen veneers come loose on instruments perhaps. So I'm going to use Titebond 3. This should never come loose. Doesn't really matter. Titebond Original would be more than adequate, trust me. It's just the simple fact that I've got the Titebond 3, got plenty of it, so I might as well just use that for this, because like I said, it's something that I don't ever want to come loose. And the Titebond 3, you cannot take it loose with water, where the Titebond Original easily comes apart with water and steam and heat. Okay, and as I predicted, as soon as you put that on there, it starts sliding. It's just like an instant reaction. It's very difficult to hold, in fact. May just try taping it in place. That might help a little bit before I put the clamps on it. That might help a little, I don't know. We'll see. Won't hurt nothing, I don't think. I don't think it'll be strong enough to hold it very well, but it might just keep it from going too far, flexing. Kind of let it get tacked up there like that, and this might even help in the tacking process. Seems to be holding in place pretty well right there now, especially putting it over those ends seemed to help a lot. I can tell it's tacking up a little bit. What I usually do on veneers is I put them in my big vise and press them together. But on this one, I think, well, I may just try that too. The only problem with it now is I've got all this tape on there, and I don't think it's going to press quite as flat. I'll put this tape across it in a few more places to keep it more flat. Got a little bit of thickness in tape right here, which might create a little bit of a problem, but I don't think so. Alright, so I think I will go over to my big vise and just clamp this in the big vise, and we'll put some blocks on this side, and we'll put a flat piece of plywood on this side and just squeeze her down, and I think that should work just fine. Been doing a little cleanup work on this peg head and the neck and everything off camera. Got it nice and straight on the sides. Got these curves here about equal. You know, it's a little hard to do. Turn my form over and trace the same pattern on both sides to try to make it more equal. I'm trying to round this around a little bit more. It's a little bit squared off right in here. And so I'm just doing all this by hand like this. When you get down to this detail, You can use, you know, power tools and things and do it a little faster and, you know, and probably get done quicker and probably do just fine. But the thing about that is, if you make a mistake with a power tool, it's generally more of a big mistake. And I typically like to keep my mistakes to a very minimal size when you get down to this detail, because you've done all this work up to this point and you sure don't want to mess it up now. It's kind of in my old days of when I was shooting competitive archery. You know, you aim small and you miss small. If you just aim it at the whole target, you'll miss big. You know, you got to aim down at that little detail level, and that's where we're at here. We're on this detail level. We're aiming small, and we're gonna, you know, if we make a mistake, it'll be a small mistake instead of a great big mistake. So anyway, I'm just trying to get that all straightened up as best I can. You know, it doesn't have to be completely final yet, but I want to get it pretty close before I go much further. Right now it's a little squared off right here on the edge where it would come up to meet the fretboard, so I'm trying to round that a little bit more. Same way on this side. With that round over tool that I used on this heel, it turned out pretty well. I don't think we're too far from finished on there, but we still got quite a bit around in this area. The next thing, before I go much further, I'll be attaching this drill jig that I made, and I'll be drilling these holes. Now, I went ahead and made these holes fit these ferrules so that I can just drill it one time for the ferrule, but the holes won't be big enough to fit this big shank here at the bottom of the tuner here on the back side. So from the back side, I'll have to drill in part of the way with a larger bit. But I figure that's the lesser of two evils, doing it that way. I would rather have the top side finished when it's finished. And like I said, these holes fit that already, so I can drill it with that drill bit, clamp this on here, drill it with that drill bit. Should work out just fine. This is a precision made hole jig, and you say, well, how is it precision made? Well, I made it on my milling machine and held it in, you know, into a milling vise. You know, I measured everything within thousandths of inches, and it's pretty darn accurate. I mean, I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's better than you'll ever do by hand or with just a pattern. Like, I've got the holes marked on a pattern here, but there is no way you could mark these and drill them and get them as accurate as this is. So that's why I did it this way. But anyway, I'm about ready to clamp this on here and see how it goes. My question is whether I want to clamp it that way a little bit, and I kind of think I do. I think I'm just going to line it up with my curve right here is how I'm going to line it up, I think. And clamp her down. Then we'll go over to the drill and I'll show you what that looks like.